All right, welcome back to bracket coverage. We're now entering conference championship weekend of the NFL. Today is what is today? It's January 24th. Um, I'm Danny Mez, here with my co-host Ryan.
Yo,
Uh, Good week last week for football. I enjoyed the games a lot. Hoping for another good week. Hoping for a weekend I'll enjoy and celebrate. Um, if you couldn't tell by the Kelsey, or if you haven't watched before, I'm an Eagles fan. Um, so hoping for NFC Conference Championship win. I'm working that game, so it'll definitely be an awesome atmosphere if they do win, and I'll have a lot of work if they win, selling those conference championship T-shirts and hoodies. I'm probably gonna buy one myself. But enough about me, Ryan. How are you doing this week? How are we feeling?
pretty solid. I don't know if I've had like that much of a rooting interest in NFL games since the Falcons lost the Super Bowl like 6 or 7 years. It might even be longer than 7 years ago at this
I think
point.
it was six. I think it was 6 years
Like
ago.
the second half of that Eagles game, like I was shitting my heart out. Like it was bad. um,
Yeah,
so yeah, a lot of Eagles rooting interest on here. I think we remain fairly unbiased. Um, I think
I'm totally
I
biased.
think I think
I'm totally.
I think our talking points like lean towards like a lot of interest in the Eagles. I think our actual like takeaways and conversations about them are not necessarily biased. And if they are, I would
Yeah,
check you on that 100%.
we're totally. I mean, I'm totally critical of the team. I'm not
Yeah.
critical of Jalen Hurts as much as other people are.
Yeah, we'll
I'll,
we'll
I'll
we'll
say
touch
that.
on that later. You tasked me with the weekly ranking last
I
week.
did. I
So we,
did.
we both came up with our top five performers of divisional weekend. I start off number one. The weird wording there. Number one for me was Jalen Carter. 5 tackles, 2 sacks, forced fumble, 6 pressures on the day against the Rams. He also had the game-sealing sack essentially. Just insane winning player. He was decimating that young interior of the Rams offensive line all day. And then number two, Saquon Barkley. I don't think two individual players carried their team more than
Yeah.
those two on the weekend. 26 carries, 205, 2 long touchdowns, 4 catches, 27 yards, getting a little involved in the passing game too. They actually really haven't thrown to him that much this year. I think average about 2 catches a game on the season. So not a whole lot of involvement there, but Jalen Hurts getting back into a rhythm. The weather conditions didn't allow for much more than some screen passes and stuff like that. So interesting if he works his way in a little bit more. Number three, Jaden Daniels, probably the best rookie quarterback season in NFL history. 22 of 31, 299, 2 touchdowns, 51 rushing yards. And he has taken one negative play in 2 playoff games as a rookie. I think he's taken 1 sack, is like the only stat. He has no fumbles, he has no interceptions. I don't know what his turnover worthy play rate is, but even if it is, even if he has more than one, it's not a significant number. Number four, Jared Verse. This dude talked a whale of trash talk before the game, and he more than backed it up. 4 tackles, 3 for loss, 2 sacks, 5 pressures, and his help in the run defense was elite on the edge. Number five, Mikey Sanders still 5 targets, 2 catches allowed for like 20 yards or 30 yards, and 2 interceptions. Got the Commanders defense starting off right in that game. And bonus for me, number six, you mentioned Karloftis in our other pod. He finished with 5 tackles, 3 sacks, and 8 pressures against the Texans. Stupid stat line.
Yeah. Karlaftis went crazy. I in my ranking, I'll start from 5 to 1.
Yeah, that makes a little
Um,
more sense, actually.
yeah, we're locked in. We gotta switch it up. I'm pretty much echoing everybody you said, maybe with just different numbers. I had Karlaftis at 5. I did put him on my top 5. I predicted he'd have a good game. I mean, 3 sacks, 4 QB hurries, 4 solo tackles. That speaks for itself. Big part of winning for the Chiefs is going to be the defense. Kind of knew that coming in, being an off year for them. Pacheco's not producing like he was these last 2 years. They've gotten good production from Kareem Hunt. Uh, and Mahomes is just, he is Mahomes, so I'm not going to underestimate him or talk down on him at all. But he's not what he was the last 2 years on these playoff runs. Um, at least not yet. He could explode this weekend, and I take it all back. But like I said, Karlaftis being a big part of that defense and defense being a big part of their success, I had to put him 5. And then you mentioned Sanders still. He had 2 interceptions, 2 pass deflections, 3 solo tackles. Overall, good game, great game. I mean, good would be underselling it.
Yeah.
Uh, that's a big part of what I think set the difference. Just the plays like that, that really the turnovers. That's what sets the difference in the playoffs, and that's what really got the win for the Commanders against this number 1 seed Detroit Lions team, who no one really thought would lose this early. Number 3, you mentioned Jalen Carter. Only reason I put him at 3 is to try to not be biased. Jalen Carter really is the reason the Eagles won that game, and I can truthfully say that. I think if he doesn't get that sack, they convert on 3rd down. If not, get short yardage on 3rd to set up a 4th down conversion, and they go down and score a touchdown. That's what I was fearful of, and that's what probably would have happened if it wasn't for that sack. So that's a game-changing play. Pretty much, almost single-handedly, like you said, him and Saquon brought him to the conference championship. Hopefully, they can clean up some of the mistakes in the conference game. But yeah, I got Jalen Carter at 3, and then I got JD 5 at 2 because he's just been ridiculous. He's been the talk of across the league the last week. A lot of people are now buying in. A lot of people weren't confident in the Commanders at all last week, and now going into Philly, people are really bought in. People are really confident in the Commanders upsetting the Eagles at home. With that being said, my number 1 for this weekend has to be Saquon. I just think you put up 200 yards in a divisional game, in a snow game like that. You get your iconic moments, you get your iconic stat line. You just can't beat that. To me, he's by far the best performance of divisional weekend, which was a doozy. And one of the stats that I saw was first that the Texans was the first team to lose while having more offensive yards and no turnovers in the playoffs, and then proceed to lose. I thought that kind of summed up how the Chiefs have been this season pretty well, but also turned out to be the story of the entire divisional round. A lot of teams had more yards. I think all the games, the team that lost had more all-purpose yards
Yeah, every
and still
every winner
lost.
got outgained. Yeah.
And end of the day, it comes down to what plays are being made when a 30-yard rush from your own 20 that does a lot. That's a great play, but a 30-yard rush from the opponent's 30 that goes in for 6, that means more at the end of the day. And the only thing that's bigger than that is turnovers. Turnovers were what makes or break your season at this part of the year, and that was the case for the Texans, the Lions, the Rams, and the Ravens.
Yeah.
Um, you turn it over at a bad time, that's it. So for the Chiefs, my prediction was 23-17. Was We had the same prediction for
Yeah,
that one, right?
we're on the same
And
page there.
the final score was 23-14, which I was very impressed with. Uh, not with the win. The win was okay. I was impressed with our predictions. And we mentioned Karlaftis. Chris Jones had a sack as well, who I predicted to be an X factor last week. I think my prediction for this game was pretty spot on. But Ryan, if you got any takeaways on this game, air them out.
Um, it was the most Chiefs game like imaginable. Mahomes hasn't thrown a football in a month. People are talking about that. Um, the regression from Travis Kelsey, and this guy puts up. He's moving at like 13 miles an hour, and this guy's getting a 58-yard gain.
Just wide open up the
Yeah,
middle.
it's absurd. These guys just know what it takes to win. They know how to do it. And I mean, Kelsey's playoff stats are absurd. His game log is
Yeah.
ridiculous. Um, the Texans left 7 points kicking off the board. I think they got a field goal block. They missed another one, and they missed an extra point. I think that's 7. Um,
Let me see.
so
2 for 3 on field goals. 0 for 1 on extra points. So yeah, left 4 points on the board.
I think Fairbairn missed a field goal. I think he missed a long field goal too.
Yeah, he missed a field goal and 1 extra point.
He had a field goal blocked at the end. It kind of didn't matter, but
Yeah, true, true. So yeah, you're right. That
I
would be
mean, it would
7
have been
points.
it would have made our prediction matter if he made it. But
True. That would have been crazy.
um, yeah, I think the talk of the town of this game is the refereeing and the officiating. Um,
100%.
it's a shame. The Mahomes is the face of the sport, like no question, and he's still really good, and you can't offset the stuff that's happening now with his previous success. My kind of big takeaway and a viewpoint on this is that if the Chiefs were winning like they did when they made that first Super Bowl and lost, where Mahomes is throwing for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns, I don't think anyone is complaining. If they're winning these games 38-31, I don't think anyone cares. But instead, they're winning, this slow, boring defensive football, and Mahomes is deferring to flag baiting, get the football equivalent term here, to churn out these timely plays and get extra yards, and it's not fair. It's almost more egregious than the fake slide, in my opinion. Like you were putting these defenders in unimaginable situations. You can't do anything. It's a lose-lose situation no matter what you do. I think we even saw it during the year. Mahomes almost had a fake slide moment where I think he acted like he was running out of bounds and then he ran up the sideline for like 25 more yards. That's like, what are you supposed to do? You can't do anything. They need a rule about that. The refs get a biased whistle. I literally don't think it's a question at this point. I'll argue with a wall. You're losing the argument. You're probably only arguing against that if you're a Chiefs fan, to be honest. Uh, don't get me wrong. It's not the reason they won the game. Like the Texans lost the game, like 100%. The Chiefs outplayed the Texans.
Hmm.
It's still a frustrating point that like needs to be brought up. And I just don't think that this Chiefs team has it. I don't know. I mean, we'll touch on it later with the conference championship prediction, which the matchup with the Bills and Josh Allen. But I don't know if this team has enough in the tank. I don't know if you can beat Buffalo scoring 23 points.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, all eyes are on how the whistle's going. That's been what everyone's talking about. Um, but that story could also get ended immediately if the Bills
Yeah,
go out and trample them this weekend. So it's kind of tough to call. But overall, in review, Texans not a great year, not the year they were expecting after
yeah. I
what
saw
last season was.
they departed with Bobby Slowick, who after last year was getting a lot of head coaching talk. And this year very up and down. I know they had the injuries. The offensive line was like brutally bad. I know they're shuffling pieces again like they did last year with injuries, but I mean it's like the same group of guys, and they drafted Blake Fisher in the second round. It's pretty much the same group of guys. There's really no reason they should be that bad on the offensive line. Joe Mixon was a nice ad. Obviously, you lose Diggs, and Tank Dell had that terrible, terrible injury. Um, and then the only thing my predictions for this game I didn't really talk about. I talked about Pacheco. Kareem Hunt had a good game. Pacheco just has not been able to get going since the foot injury. And then Will Anderson for the Texans had 2 sacks. The tackles for the Chiefs are still not good.
Yeah, and could be an issue against the Bills. I'm I'm not gonna get into who I think is gonna win that matchup yet. We'll save that for a few minutes.
For sure.
We're gonna move on to this next game, which was a thriller and the kind of football people want to see this time of year. Commanders taking down the number one seed Lions at Ford Field, 45-31. Uh, I couldn't be more wrong with my prediction about the Lions defense chasing down Jenny Daniels. Um, I did say last week that I don't think people are giving JD5 and that Commanders team a fair shot at the Lions, but I did not expect this. Not in any capacity did I expect them putting up 45 points against the number one seed in the NFC. Nowhere did I expect um, the Lions to turn the ball over like they did. And I didn't expect Jared Goff playing through what I think was a concussion.
Yeah, that
Uh,
was.
I didn't expect him to get concussed. That pick six, I'll stand on that. I think he was concussed there. Um, and
Well,
that could
he wasn't
there's
concussed before he threw the ball. He definitely was after he threw the
yeah,
ball. Good
Yeah, there's
God.
no way you could convince me that
Ugh.
he was 100% after that hit. Before then, I would hear you and I'd brush it off because if we're being honest, there's probably plenty of concussions that happen throughout the game that
Yeah.
get ignored, um, brushed over. It's an issue, but that's not my call at all. Um, I don't. That's above my pay grade to
Yeah,
talk about that one.
not a great thing to speculate on for sure.
Yeah, but I don't think he was okay, and I think that in return caused some of the mistakes that happened on the Lions, and that's kind of the story of the Lions. Just injuries. I hate to blame it on one thing,
Yeah.
but if you're gonna cope one way, that's definitely the way to go. Uh, it sucks. No one likes injuries, but they happen. It's a part of the game. That's just the nature of the NFL. JD5 was the X factor. Brian Branch did have 8 solo tackles and a forced fumble, who I did mention last week. I think that's a pretty good game. And I also mentioned Jameer Gibbs, who had 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mentioned those because of my prediction last week, but ultimately wasn't enough. You could call it X factor, shows the X factor ability, but it wasn't an X factor in the game. Um, the story of the game is really just the commander stepping up to the plate, and everyone seems to be bought in on that side. And they're a scary team coming into this weekend. No doubt about it. But again, we'll talk about this weekend in a few. Ryan, what bits do you have about this game?
I think after I think Washington was what 7-2 after that Hail Mary against Chicago maybe, and
Yeah,
everyone was riding the wave. And then they faltered a little bit. I want to say they were 8-5, maybe 7-5 even, and then they finished the season 12-5, and they've won 2 straight playoff games. They've won 7 in a row. The offense is humming. The defense is looks competent. Don't get me wrong; it's not great. It's far from great.
they've
Um,
got their holes.
but it's like average enough to where the offense being so elite and so efficient is like it more than offsets. Like you're outscoring your opponent because your defense is just good enough. It's not like the Atlanta Falcons defense from when they made the Super Bowl. That defense was bad and made the occasional big play. This defense is just like steady enough. And that's a big difference. Ta- Takeaway from this game: 5 turnovers to none.
Yeah,
I mean, you're not winning a game when that's happening. We thought the Lions would win. That was a unanimous thing. I did mention specifically the nerves I had about the Lions defense has been a weak point the whole year. They got historically unlucky with injuries. Um, Really unfortunate excuse. It's a pretty fair excuse. Don't get me wrong. They're playing like practice squad players who've been on the team for like a week. Like that's not fair. You're a 1 seed. You're in the playoffs. Unreal season and a really tragic way for it to end. Um, I think the talk of the town is more about Washington, though. I actually think the home field for Detroit benefited Washington way more than it did Detroit. Jaden being able to play in a dome is like the biggest advantage for him in the world. I feel like he's a warm weather quarterback. You can say what you want about those kind of guys. He did play in the NFC East this year, but ASU, LSU, I he operates better in the warm weather. That's what he's used to. Um, and I cited offensive players that needed to step up, and I mean they got contributions from absolutely everyone. Brian Robinson had 80 yards, 2 touchdowns. Eckler had 80 scrimmage yards. Jerry McNichols had a touchdown. Another really good game for Diami Brown, who's shout out playoff performer Diami Brown. This dude's done. I think he's like doubled his receiving total from the regular season in these 2 playoff games.
last week it was playoff.
Jahan
Oh my
Dotson,
god, playoff Jahan
the
Dotson
one
that we
play.
were
I don't know if he
talking
had a
about.
target in the last game, but it's fine.
Yeah,
Zach Ertz had a touchdown, and then I talked about the Commanders linebackers stopping the Lions running game, which did not happen. But Frankie Louvu had 9 tackles and a fumble recovery, and probably concussed Jared Goff. And Bobby Wagner had 8 tackles. He gets his game to game. The dog is booling right now.
yeah, yeah.
Probably
He's going crazy.
very
It's because
loud.
he's
This is
it's because
ridiculous.
he knows our next topic. He knows what we're about to talk about.
And then my key for the Lions defense was containing Jaden Daniels and getting some pass rush, and that absolutely
Mhm.
did not happen. So
Yeah.
shout out Washington. This is just an awesome game for them, and I think Dan Quinn silenced a lot of haters. We'll see what happens when he comes up to an even bigger game in the NFC Championship. But man, Washington's a really fun team. Really, really fun team.
Yeah. Yeah. They're gonna be awesome to watch. I gotta give it to them. But I'll tell you about awesome teams, and I'll tell you about what wins championships. Everybody knows what wins championships. You know what wins championships. It's the defense. And the fact that last week in my prediction I didn't name Jalen Carter is 100% my fault because I knew better. I knew better, and if we're talking about the dogs. He's one of the dogs
Yeah.
in many ways. The Philly dogs, the Georgia dogs. He's I need him to recreate the picture of him picking up Jaden Daniels so bad. But that's for our next segment. Should have mentioned Jalen Carter. That's on me. Um, huge X factor as predicted. Saquon and the O line. I can't give credit to Saquon without crediting the boys up front.
I
Mekhi
actually
Becton had an interesting
I was
game
gonna say, yeah,
because
I do want to touch on that a little bit later because I mean,
because
I saw it a little bit, and a lot of it goes to the Jalen Hurts discourse. The
mm-hmm.
interior of the offensive line and pass protection has not been great.
It has been great. I will say, yeah, we could blame Jalen Hurts for some of it, not all of it. I think the safety was not on Jalen Hurts. A lot of people are going to could have dumped it to Goddard, but Landon Dickerson kind of he chip blocked the nose tackle lined up right in front of him. He's lined up right in front of him, like Pee Wee football. You know, if there's a guy in front of you, you hit him, you block him. And then he chip blocks him. Why am I blanking on the left guard? Steen? Not Steen.
Well, Landon is the left
It's
guard.
Landon Dick. What?
Landon is the left guard.
Landon. Why am I? Okay, he's the left guard and the
Becton is at
center.
right guard. Center is Jurgens.
Becton's Jurgens. Yeah, so Cam Jurgens chips him on his left shoulder, and then Dickerson chips him on the right shoulder. So he's getting chipped on both sides, and then he's got a wide open lane straight to Jalen Hurts,
Yeah,
for the sack in the end zone.
I don't know if they were
I
running a stunt too, but he got kind of like bounced into the other dude's space and just no one picked him up. It was really odd. It was the shortest time Jalen took a sack in that game. I think it was like less than two
mhm,
seconds he got sacked. So
yeah.
I mean, he took some bad sacks earlier, like long time to throw, and he just ate it, which is better than turning the ball over. But
Hmm.
missed out on some potential field goal opportunities earlier too. Yeah, interesting
Exactly.
game for the offensive line. I think they're propped up very highly, and I honestly think you could attribute a lot of the question marks from them so far on the fact that they've played really good front sevens.
Yeah.
The Packers and the Rams especially have unreal front sevens. They really do.
Yeah. And I
But yeah,
I think they'll have a much better game this next week, but we're not talking about next week yet. Um, I mentioned Mekhi Becton, who, against the Rams gets drilled by Jared Verse.
yeah, that was oh my
Um,
god, that play was hilarious.
that was rough. That was a tough watch. I'm sitting there like
Oh,
cringing at
oh my god,
cringing at
he
the TV
he just
screen.
like shoulder checked him too. He didn't even put his whole body weight into him.
Yeah, and then Mekhi Becton just he was shook, man. That was bad. But then Mekhi Becton also blew open the hole for that long Saquon touchdown,
Yeah,
and
they have their moments. Everyone on the offensive
like
line has their moments.
yeah, exactly. That goes with every offensive line. Overall, I'm not going to overanalyze Mekhi Becton or anyone else on that offensive line. That offensive line is solid, and it's the last thing I have to worry about. But before I move on from the O line, I want to say the last person you expect to make a critical mistake in this game, Lane Johnson on the tush push, 4th and 1,
Yeah, that was brutal.
at the goal line, basically, um, gets a bad false start. That was a bad false start, and that can't happen in that situation. And Lane Johnson's the last guy you'd expect, and I would bet that he doesn't make that mistake again for the rest of the playoffs. Um, whether that's one or two more games, I don't know. but I doubt Lane Johnson makes that mistake twice because he knows more than anybody how critical of a false start that is. Because again, if it wasn't for a Jalen Carter sack, that could have been the season. Um, that's the last comment I really have. Other than that, you know, they blew holes open for Saquon, who had 232 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts also had a long 44-yard touchdown run. That's 285 total rush yards and 3 total rush touchdowns against the Rams. So by no means am I trying to be nitpicky or overanalyze this offensive line. They're incredible, and no one should be upset with the performance. We can notice, some concerning plays, but I think I think they're fine. Jalen Carter, like I mentioned, 2 sacks and a forced fumble. Zach Bond, who is up for DPOI, he had a tackle for loss and a fumble recovery. And then Isaiah Rodgers, who came in for injured Quinyon Mitchell, who will be back next week. Um, he had a fumble recovery and a pretty sweet return on that.
Dude, the spin move straight out of the scoop was impressive.
Was cinema. I was like, wow. I was like, he came to play. Um, Isaiah Rodgers had an article from the Philadelphia Inquirer written about him, written by Marcus Hayes, who, if you recognize that name, criticized Embiid earlier this season and mentioned his deceased brother,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
but Arthur Embiid, who Joel named his son after. That was written by Marcus Hayes. So was this headline by Marcus Hayes that was titled something along the lines of "Disgraced Gambler Isaiah Rodgers
Oh, I do
gets
remember
playing
seeing
time."
that. Yeah.
And Isaiah Rodgers responded to it on Twitter, basically calling him a goofy or a clown or something like that. Uh, but I want to say Isaiah Rodgers, he did have some shaky moments in that game, which is expected. He's not a starter.
Yeah.
You're coming into a pretty intense game. Mistakes will happen. But I think overall, with that fumble recovery, also helping how I look at his game as a whole too. Uh, I didn't really have an issue with this game. He held up decent. Nolan Smith had the strip sack, which we're big Nolan Smith guys on this
He's
show.
been unbelievable.
He's
And
been great, and I'm so happy
I've
for
been
him.
I've been calling for the Nolan breakout since they got Vic, and I mean it is here and it is here in a big way.
Yeah,
Really fun player. My immediate thought is, what if this guy becomes Elvis Dumerville? But he is so much more athletic than Elvis Dumerville. It's like not even a competition, and he's also
yeah,
super slight. I think Elvis Dumerville was like 6 foot, like 260. Nolan might be like 240, if that.
yeah.
Like he is
Nolan Smith
he is an
has been
animal.
incredible.
If Vic can even, start replicating the Bond's coverage ability with Nolan down the line, I mean, one of the most versatile pieces in the league. If he's
Hmm.
able to, start dropping off into coverage a little bit more effectively, really fun player though. I mean, he is just swiping edges. The get off is unreal, and in the snow, if the offensive lineman oversets or tries to punch a little bit too much, they're slipping too. So most of the time, he's just running right by them.
Yeah,
Huge play. The takeaways again, massive.
and I do want to say on that fumble that was recovered by Isaiah Rodgers, there was an underrated play by C.J. Gardner Johnson within that play where ball's in the middle of probably 5 players, and there's a couple Rams players that are closer to it, I think.
Oh, he like kind of like punched it
But
out, didn't he?
he punched it out, which ended up right in the lane that
Yeah.
Isaiah Rodgers was running for. That play was, I mean, making that play is just as good as punching it out of Kyron Williams's arms to begin with. Uh, that that was a huge play, and I didn't want that to go unrecognized. Darius Slay also had a great game in coverage. Um,
That Puka catch though.
that was dirty.
Oh, I
That was
was
dirty.
dude. That
Puka had
was
a good game.
my heart sank. Like
Yeah,
that
dude.
was
I
that was
thought it was.
scary hours, dude.
I thought we were gonna have to see Jalen Hurts 2 minute drill, if anything. I was slow word, but Slade did have a good game overall, um, and that last incompletion on fourth down from Matt Stafford. Did that remind you of any other Eagles playoff divisional game? Do you think of any other divisional game you can compare that to? Thought of Matt Ryan looking for Julio Jones on 4th down in the end zone, and he overthrows him to the outside, and it
And
goes incomplete.
I mean, Stafford like kind of didn't even throw to anybody. I
Yeah,
think
he
it just
kinda
slipped out of his hand.
yeah. But the way because in the moment watching it, just waiting, you're sitting on pins and needles. You
Yeah,
see him look at the guy outside and look to pass it. The second it's coming out of his hands, it's in God's hands at that point. I don't
the
know what's going on. And I just see it sail over to the sideline, and that's what it reminded me of personally.
that Falcons game, I think they ran like 7 or 8 plays at the goal line. It was disgusting.
Yeah,
That was gross. I remember I was at my
yeah.
aunt's house watching that game. That was disgusting.
You were rooting for the Falcons that game, right?
I mean, whenever the Falcons and Eagles were playing, I'd try to watch it with her. It's just like they were always fun games, but like
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, it's whatever. It was fine. It was just annoying. I think that was the year after they lost the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it was the year after they lost the Super Bowl to the Patriots, and it was the year before Eagles won the Super it was the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it was a Nick Foles year. Yeah,
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 because they won that game, hosted the Vikings, and then went over to Minnesota anyways right
yeah,
after to go play the Super Bowl. Um, that was the same year as the Minnesota Miracle,
yeah. That was a
Minneapolis
that was a
Miracle.
pretty crazy playoffs.
Blake Bortles made the AFC Championship game.
So did Case Keenum
Yup,
and Nick
yup,
Foles,
and Nick Foles, and then
Tom
Tom
Brady.
Brady, who did not win the Super Bowl that year against those 3
And
quarterbacks.
you should have lost to Blake Bortles too. Don't even get me started.
Oh, no comment. No comment. Don't get me started. No comment.
God, that Jags team was so good. I love that Jags team.
Saxonville, man.
So fun.
We love throwbacks. We love throwbacks on bracket
I
coverage, bro.
love. I just live for the defensive teams, and then they have a name. No, the
It's
Legion of Boom, the No Fly Zone, Saxonville. God, iconic
yeah.
teams, iconic groups.
This Eagles defense needs a
Yeah,
name.
someone's got to
I
find a
guess
name for them.
Philly Dogs is the but
Maybe,
that's not
maybe.
the same.
Yeah,
I'm not I like it, but not to compare at all to Saxonville, No Fly Zone, or
yeah,
Legion of
yeah.
Boom.
It's not on the
They
same
need
level.
something new.
All right.
They
I'm just
My
gonna.
last note on
Okay.
this Eagles game before I toss it over to you
Yeah.
is I was wrong. I do admit what I'm wrong on here. And I predicted an AJ Brown game. I projected a big game, but he had 2 catches for 14 yards. He did have a big conversion on 4th
And
down,
he had the drop
but
touchdown.
I'm delaying. It's not over. I'm just delaying it one more week. I think this weekend because I'm not going to explain why yet. I'm actually going to explain when we actually talk about the championship
I
matchups.
know what you're
I'm
gonna say
passing it to
too.
you.
I already know.
Yep,
I already know what point you're gonna make later.
yeah,
Um.
yeah.
So some of my takeaways in this, we mentioned Saquon and Jalen Carter almost single-handedly won this game. While that's kind of true, you can't overlook the spot contributions from the role players on this team. Um, Jalix Hunt, Moro Ajomo. I'm a big Jalix Hunt guy. They both got a sack. They're both pretty timely sacks. There's contributions across the board from the defensive guys at least. Devontae had a couple catches. It wasn't really a big receiving game anyway. It was just kind of Saquon on
Mhm,
offense. And speaking of offense, I'll touch on the offensive line too. We were talking about a little bit before. The down to down success rate of the Eagles running game is not great. It hasn't been very good. Now they've played two very good defenses, don't get me wrong. But I also almost don't care because if you're guaranteeing 1 to 2 50 plus yard runs a game, you can't just get rid of that.
yeah,
It's like oh, if a guy in college runs for 250 yards, but two of his runs are for 75-yard touchdowns, you're like, oh, you take those away. He only had 50 yards on, 15 carries. That's not how it works.
yeah.
You don't just take away those runs. That's 14 points, and those are huge swings.
There's there's a fun saying in soccer. There's a fun video. It's a Liverpool fan where they're debating about Sadio Mane, who he played for Liverpool, and he's talking about how he thinks he's the greatest player in the world. And he says, "I don't do if buts. I don't do ifs or buts. I do absolutes." He says, if my aunt had balls, she'd be my uncle,
Yeah,
but she
classic.
doesn't, so she
Yep,
isn't.
yep,
So
yeah,
yeah, if you take away 10 points from the Eagles, the Rams win 22-18. But I have bad news. They
yeah,
scored 28.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
that's it.
So yeah, the Jalen Hurts run was big early on. I'll talk about Jalen in a little bit too. I just kind of want to try to touch on everybody here before I start extrapolating on a point. Braden Mann, underrated game. That dude was big for the special teams operation,
Yeah.
and Elliott had a borderline like scary game. Extra points you don't think about. The first thing that my coach in high school talked about when we were playing, when we're getting ready for situational, we're doing situational stuff in the locker room, kind of talking about that stuff. He emphasizes if you go and score a touchdown and miss the extra point, it's like you didn't score. If the other team
Yeah.
goes down and scores a touchdown, you lose. If they make
Yeah.
the extra point, obviously, that's another if, and it's not great to deal and operate that way. But when you're thinking about it, 6 points compared to 7 is a big difference, especially when you only need to outscore the other team by 1 point. Like, so Braden Mann had a couple of huge holds in there for field goals. Jake missed 2 extra points, which is not great. Um, and I think one of the main points I said they need to score touchdowns. You need to score touchdowns and make the extra points. Um, getting the
Lock in,
7
Jake.
instead of the 6 is really important.
Yeah.
I touched on the offensive line in the running game. 34 carries, 285 yards. You're averaging like 8 yards a carry. And they say, oh, it's all on 3 runs. I don't care. That's 21 of your points. It just doesn't matter to me. And if you're busting those holes open and you're converting on the big runs, the down to down stuff, as long as you're in manageable situations, even if it's 3rd and 7 compared to a 3rd and 13, that's
Hmm.
better than taking a sack, which Jalen took many sacks from that Rams front. I'll hit on Jalen Hurts really quick. Him and Josh Allen had an almost identical game,
Yeah.
and no one said a single peep about Josh Allen. Um, this is what I emphasized in the last game too. These guys do, especially you even see with Mahomes now, which people are complaining about. These guys do what it takes to win in the context of the game you're playing.
Hmm.
If Mahomes needs to throw for 300 yards against Buffalo next week, or this weekend, it's not even next week, it's in a couple days. I guarantee you he would do it.
Yeah.
He could throw 150 yards to Noah Gray for all I care. He would find a way to do it.
It's game management.
Yeah, you're managing the game. He could have fumbled on the sacks. He didn't. He just ate it a lot of the time. Now,
Or
granted he could have thrown the ball away a lot of the time.
I was gonna say the thing about that though is Jalen in previous years, which was a huge criticism he's faced for the last his whole career, even going back to Alabama and Oklahoma. He panics when there's a guy in his face, and he'll toss it. Say AJ Brown's down there, he can win some 50-50s, but he'll end up throwing a 75-20 that gets intercepted. And end of the day, do I love how long he holds the ball? Not in the slightest. But we can live with, as much as we hate to, a 10-yard sack rather than an interception.
Yeah,
And that is always that's always what I'll take. I'd rather neither, but if I have to pick one,
yeah. That's
taking a
always an
sack.
interesting conversation. I remember, I think the year they made the Super Bowl, they would overemphasize how bad he was rolling left.
Hmm.
I mean, he's a righty, but like a lot of quarterbacks make it work. He's kind of clunky when he moves out of the pocket.
Yeah,
Like he just moves like a running back. I don't really know how else to like when he's
like kind
running.
of like a stutter step, and you see the broad shoulders,
He's
and
very slow and methodical, and I don't think his build like allows him to contort his body the way that's required to make a throw when you're running to your left when you're a righty. That's some
mhm.
anatomical stuff you can debate later. I just kind of think that's like what I see with my eyes when I watch him.
Yeah,
There's some stuff you could look at about sacks being more devastating than turnovers. I you know there's analytics to back that up occasionally, but in playoff football, you got a defense you can trust. Don't turn the ball over. Don't let the defense
yeah,
make a play. Just eat it, and he ate it. He ate it bad on 2 drives early on. He could have maybe kicked a field goal, but at least you're playing field position at the very worst. I'll touch on the Rams too. Really good season for them. They were kind of dead in the water. I think they were 5-6. They finished 10-7. They win the NFC West. And McVay continues to adapt. I emphasize this as well. Their front seven is gross, dude. Kobe Turner, Jarrett Verse, Braden Fisk got injured. It's kind of unfortunate. They took Neville Gallimore from Dallas, who I think was like a day 2 pick. He had the safety. Um, I'm blanking on someone else on that front. Byron Young. Like they got dudes. Omar Spates had a really good game. He had the forced fumble
Hmm.
on Jalen at one point.
That got recovered by, is that Saquon who jumped on it?
Yeah, I think maybe Jalen got it
Something like
back. I
that.
don't really remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, those guys are super talented and super young. Um, Interested to see how they progress with Matt Stafford. Their offensive line is a little questionable. As long as McVay is there, it's just one of those situations. As long as McVay is there, the Rams will be good. Um, he, what is the saying? You get blood out of a stone or something like that. Like
Oh, I didn't
he
know that
gets blood
saying.
out of a
No, it's
stone.
not.
He finds a way. Uh,
Hmm.
I don't. Rams are a pretty fun team. I like defenses, really young defense, aggressive front seven. It was a fun competitive game, and yeah, I don't have that many takeaways for them because they lost. To be honest, it kind of played out the way
Hmm.
I expected it to. If I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, I mean, heavy run game. It's a snow game. The defense stands up. Maybe not exactly according to plan, but more or less the stats show kind of what we expected.
Yeah, it was a
Um,
very the stats were very indicative of what you saw on the field.
yeah, and I'll tell you what was not expected, in my opinion. Bills 27, Ravens 25, and a rough Mark Andrews game. Um, but a rough Ravens game in general. Just a rough game overall. For me, this was kind of like a no notes kind of game. I have no comment on the two leading MVP candidates and how they played. And I have no comment on either of the running backs, so I thought would be X factors either. I don't really have much to say. I didn't expect, you know, neither team to hit 30. I thought I thought this score was gonna look more like Commanders Lions, and I thought Commanders Lions would look more or less like this scoring wise. Um, I thought there was gonna be a lot more offense. I thought there was gonna be a lot more points. I predicted Rousseau had a good game. He had a sack, which is good, but nothing crazy. No one really filled up the stat sheet like I expected them to.
I said Ravens 27-24, so I was really close. Obviously, not getting the winner doesn't matter, but I
What was my score prediction? Wait, one sec. I gotta remember what
yeah.
I said. 38-31 in overtime. Yeah,
Oh
I
yes, I remember. I
almost went overtime.
Yeah, there was a funny stat I think I saw where the Ravens were undefeated when Derrick Henry runs for 85 yards and he had 84. So
Wow.
people can scrounge for those stats and stuff like that. I always think is funny. That's a funny little stat.
Maybe if they ran it on that 2 point,
Yeah, maybe.
who
I
knows?
there was some good stuff with Mark Andrews after the game. I think someone started a GoFundMe for him, and I think he donated it to a charity of his choice,
He
something
has a
along those lines.
foundation. He has a
Yeah,
foundation because he's been diabetic for a while, and he has a pediatric diabetes kind of foundation, and a lot of Bills fans, which they're known to do this as well.
yeah. Bills
Um,
Mafia, just easily one of the best fan bases of any sport anywhere.
you could
Uh,
find it all.
yeah,
You could find it
great,
all with them.
great people. I will touch on Mark Andrews though. That fumble was just like kind of mind boggling.
It was bad.
I don't know if he's fumbled in his entire career or at least a very very long time.
Yeah,
Um, and then obviously the drop 2 point conversion, which people can pull up Mark Andrews 2 point conversions all they want, and they're like 0 for 3 on attempts the last 3 years thrown to Mark Andrews.
yeah,
So yeah, not questionable. Like maybe questionable. That drive by Lamar was like absolute perfection. Um, Down the stretch, Isaiah Likely the sliding touchdown to try to tie it. Him and Bateman had great games.
yeah,
They're really stepping up. They're going to be really good players next year. Isaiah Likely needs to lead the team in receiving next year. I'm kind of hope that happens. He's so good.
yeah.
Um, And then I was talking about the Bills linebackers because the Steelers really struggled containing Lamar. Lamar only had 39 yards rushing. Terrell Bernard, he's a splashy player, dude. The forced fumble and fumble recovery on Mark Andrews. Dorian Williams had 4 tackles. Matt Milano had 3. Um, it's the turnovers. The interception from Lamar led to points, and then the fumble from Lamar led to points. Um, and the fumble from Mark Andrews was really unfortunate situationally. Actually, I don't know if the
Mhm.
interception led to points, but the two fumbles definitely led to points.
Yeah.
Um, and the Bills end up winning by 2, and they got, I think, at least 10 points off those 2 turnovers. Uh,
The,
so,
the
so that's the big swing.
That's the big swing, and I hate people who act like that 2 point drop is the big swing because that's not it.
Yeah, no,
I was talking to my roommate about it, and he says, I mean, this is everyone says this, but he said this. It was like if your season is coming down to a 2 point conversion, something went wrong before that 2 point
yeah.
conversion.
I mean, they
That's
tried
just
one,
it.
they tried one earlier as well to tie the game at
Hmm.
21, and instead of it being 21-20, and then and it's 27-20, and you can tie 27-27 with extra point, then you're down 8.
Yeah,
It's a philosophy thing. Like, I think in a playoff game you should probably chase points.
yeah.
We'll talk about it with Notre Dame for a little bit. We don't have much to talk about in that game, but that is something I do want to talk about,
Hmm.
with the 2 point conversions and how that whole fourth quarter kind of shook out. But yeah, like kind of like another game where you watch these teams play, and I'm not really too surprised. I'm not really impressed either by anyone.
Yeah,
It
I'm not.
it just kind of sucks that Lamar can't win,
Yeah,
because him in the playoffs is kind of like, oh, I'm gonna do this Superman thing, and then I'm gonna turn it over, and then I'm gonna do
yeah,
this Superman thing to make up for it. And it's like, oh, come, you can't keep doing this, man. Like,
yeah,
you gotta put it all together all at once. You had like 5 turnovers during the regular season. You had 2 in one game. I know that's maybe a little nitpicky and like whatever. It's a playoff defense, but like that's the big story. And Derrick Henry 16 for 84 is not a super inspiring game. I think he had like 200
yeah.
on the Bills during the regular season. Um, I don't know.
He had a huge game against the Bills. Yeah,
It's so strange with Harbaugh. He won a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco and a good defense, and but there's old players on that team, and this team just feels like it has all the talent in the world, and they got it together, and they just can't do it with Lamar. I really don't know what to pinpoint it on. Um, and unfortunately, this game from Buffalo didn't inspire me that they could beat the Chiefs.
yeah. I mean, I don't feel inspired by anybody other than the Commanders, which is why I think everyone's
Yeah,
flocking onto that bandwagon.
yeah,
They're
that's
the
fair.
only team that looks inspiring
Yeah,
and like all locked in
100%.
coming into this championship weekend. Um, and with that being said, that's the next game we're going to be watching, and that's the next game we're going to talk about. Is going to be the NFC Championship game at 3 o'clock on Sunday, right here, 20 minutes away south from me. Um, it's this is everything here. This is it. This is the whole season for both these teams. That's how playoffs work. So I'm kind of just stating the obvious. One gets a trip to the Super Bowl. One gets to go home. This morning, an interesting development came to my attention on my news feed, and it was that a iconic statue here in Philadelphia has been defaced by not only those colors. I saw a Redskins logo
That's
on
wild.
Rocky
That's
Balboa,
that's funny.
and I was like, "Whoa, this is like hate crime level stuff right now. Let's tone it down.
I
This is not acceptable in 2025."
That's not where I was gonna go, but I wanted to mention it earlier and I kind of forgot. The Commanders lost Sam Cosmi with a torn ACL, and he is
That
super
is
important
huge.
for their offensive line. And man, Jalen Carter is gonna line up against, I can't even remember who their backup guard is. He's gonna line up
He-
against like Tyler
yeah,
Biotish, Nick Allegretti, and their backup guard. Like, I know Biotish is a pretty good player and Allegretti's been okay, but man, if that isn't a
yeah.
favorable matchup, I don't know what
Yep,
is.
I love it, bro. I love it, and he's gonna be seeing double teams all game, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I still expect him to be a big impact in this game. I made the mistake of not thinking he'd be or not mentioning him as an X factor last week. I won't do that again this week. He will be an X factor. And an interesting development. Also, you could think of bulletin board material, poking the bear, whatever you want to call it. This could be it. And Washington's defensive coordinator in a press conference was talking about Jalen Hurts, and he was concussed on a hit by Louvu earlier this year. Noticing a trend with Louvu, but that's not anything. Um, and they were asking him about Jalen Hurts and whatever and his running, and he made a statement, almost sounded like a warning shot towards Jalen and Kellen Moore, saying, "If you want to run like a running back, you're going to get hit like a running back. You're going to take hits like a running back." And that's up to the discretion of them over there if that's how they want to call their plays, if that's what they want to do off the scramble, whatever. Now, I want to credit 975 the Fanatic here in Philadelphia because they had this reaction that I'm kind of going to echo right now. That you could that's fair to say because of course you're going to say if you're going to run you're going to get hit like a running back. That's fair. But there's, like I said, the stats from 975. There's two quarterbacks that have more rushing yards on the season. Do you know who they are? They're pretty easy to guess.
Jaden and Lamar.
Yup. Jaden and Lamar. So you are saying that, if this guy's going to run, he's going to take big hits when one of the only two other quarterbacks that run more than him is on your team. And I'm just saying, like, there's been a call, like a bat signal for CJ Gardner Johnson here in Philadelphia because they got Louvu, and there's a bunch of dogs here in Philly
I will
that
I will say too, a huge knock on Jaden coming out of college is that he doesn't slide and he takes a lot of really really
he
bad
does
hits.
not
He's
he does
kind of
not slide.
since the beginning of the year, he's kind of shut that down. Like he protects himself a lot. He runs out of bounds a lot. He
Yeah,
kind of flops to the ground on his own discretion a lot. Like
yeah.
he'll eat like a 2 yard gain where maybe he could have gotten 4 or 5,
Hmm.
just to hit the deck. So he's gotten a lot better protecting his body. Um, yeah, he got crushed in college like endlessly. So
And I mentioned Jalen Carter lifting him up, Georgia versus LSU, holding him the way he was holding former Georgia quarterback Matt Stafford this past week in the divisional game.
yeah.
He picked them up. So I'd love to see that picture recreated in the NFC Championship. That would be awesome. Uh, One of the big things I think for this game will be my X factor this week on the offense. I know last week I said Saquon O line, Saquon and the O line as X factors. Now I want to switch it up. I said AJ Brown. I'm gonna stick with that. I think he's gonna have a big game. I'm gonna say Kellen Moore is an X factor this week for the Eagles. And the reason I think that is, like you said, if you're getting 200 yards a game from your running back, you're not going to stop that. So I expect them out the gate. You're going to run heavy with Saquon. Again, maybe run with Jalen too, a little read option, stuff like that. Um, they're going to continue to do that, hammer, pound the rock, just right up the gut, do what you got to do. See how that goes for you. Um, but you got to force them to stop the run because if you stop the run, I think this is a barbecue chicken week for AJ Brown lining up against Marshawn Lattimore.
I do that the Kenny Pickett game that they lost. I think he threw to Marshawn. I think he threw AJ Brown, Marshawn Lattimore like 10 times in a row, and I
Yes,
think
just the
Lattimore had like,
DPIs.
yeah, I think Lattimore had like 3 or 4 defensive pass interferences. It was
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah.
Just a random note that doesn't matter at all. Uh, since they played twice in the regular season, I'm happy Washington beat them once actually, because if you're 2-0 against a team, I just feel like it's really hard to beat a team 3 times.
3 times. That's a little scary, and you don't get a fair, like, from Washington's perspective. You don't really have a fair look at the Eagles' offense without Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I
I
mean
I think.
they played them early on. It was a big Saquon game. as expected. But
Yeah,
yeah, that was the game. There's a big Terry McLaurin Quinion Mitchell matchup, and I think Terry had like one catch for 5 yards or
for,
something like
he
that
had a touchdown catch on Quinion, I think.
at the end of the year. In the last game of the year,
Yeah. You're right. In the
the
last
the,
game of the
the
year, he
game
had
at the link was
it. Yeah,
really
Thursday night
was
football.
really more slow. I remember the ending sequence for Washington was kind of odd. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I remember that game ending out kind of weird. It was 26-18, so a pretty peculiar score.
No,
Um,
let me do some research here.
yeah, and then
Let me find.
obviously Jaden ended the year with that 5 touchdown game where Washington had 5 turnovers and they won anyway. Kenny Pickett was playing too, which you know Kenny
Yeah.
Pickett.
So at the end of I do remember this game. Actually, I remember this game now. Good game. This Thursday night football, 26-18, Eagles won. Zach Ertz got a touchdown and 2-point conversion to get it within 8. They tried the onside, they didn't get it. Saquon had a 39-yard touchdown run. Reed Blankenship had that pick.
Dude, all of his interceptions are like sliding over the middle.
Yup, every single time, even dating back to week 1 in Brazil. It's been awesome. Hopefully he can lock in and be an X factor this week. That would be awesome. Quinion versus Terry will be big. Maybe the return of the Grim Reaper that is playoff Jahan Dotson
Yeah, against his former
coming
team.
to haunt Washington.
That would be really fitting.
That'd be awesome. That'd be
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, I'll look at guys like that in the passing game. Like give me a Dallas Goddard Jahan Dotson game, and I'm gonna say extension of the running game, Saquon Barkley in the passing game. Just get the dude the ball anyway, anyhow.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
we saw a plethora of screenplays from Kellen against the Rams, which were
Hmm.
all very timely and very successful, except
Yeah,
one illegal man downfield on one to Dallas. Um,
yeah. That was rough.
that was unfortunate, but yeah, I mean,
That would
I
have been an awesome play
yeah,
too.
it was a really good play call. Kellen's been good in my opinion in the playoffs.
Hmm.
So I just this is really fun. This is Washington at their absolute peak versus just Philadelphia has been steady, just what you expect week in and week out.
Yeah.
Um, just I wonder how many times we're gonna see this matchup in the future in the playoffs because man,
Hmm.
I mean like these two teams collision course right now with how Howie manages the Eagles roster and then Washington got their guy and Dan Quinn pretty big flip of the script head coaching job from him and the whole Washington organization they get rid of God who was that annoying dude that everyone hated that sold the
Oh
team.
my God. Yeah, I know who you're talking
As
about.
soon as he sells the team, they're good. Isn't that hilarious?
All right.
Lot of rambling here from us.
Lot of rambling.
Uh,
We're gonna
yeah,
we're gonna make our final predictions
yeah.
on this.
We're getting there eventually. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. It's a steady climb. It's a long road to the
All
end.
right,
We know
please say yours. I'm gonna have a stroke.
that. Hosting the NFC Championship, the Philadelphia Eagles punch their ticket to New Orleans, beating Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. I'll say they put up 30 points. I say that they win 31. I like 23. I say 31-23 because I said 23 last week and that panned out well. 31-23, Eagles win.
I went 34-29 Eagles win because the weather looks a little more favorable.
Yeah.
And you know, I think it's like mid 30s to 40s. No
Yeah. It
precipitation.
shouldn't
So
be too bad. But there's no dome here, Jaden. You
yeah,
can't run. You can't run.
it'll be interesting. Really looking forward to that. It should be a fun game.
Yeah. And a game
Just
that
something different too.
a game that will be really interesting because a lot of people I know, there's two kinds of people in Philly right now, and they either feel amazing and they're thrilled, which if you told me 2 weeks ago that Eagles are playing Commanders in the NFC Championship, I would have been thrilled. And then there's the people that are hesitant and they're like, the Commanders are hot. They're coming in hot.
I mean, I'd just be hesitant regardless because it's an NFC Championship game. I don't really care who I'm playing.
Exactly. It does. It shouldn't matter. It's any
Yeah.
given Sunday, and that's been my message. I think that Washington's a team to be feared. And I think anyone who doesn't fear what they have going on right now is an idiot. Um, with that being said, I am confident in my birds, and I believe. I believe, and I think this is the year. And I think Jalen Hurts is going to prove so many people wrong. And I've been pushing this agenda for years, bro. I've been pushing this agenda before he was even in Philly.
You should F
But
around and throw for 350 yards.
I would, oh my God, that would be beautiful. And I couldn't ask for anything else more than that. But there's on the other side of the country, I mean, Midwest, I guess, over at Arrowhead, there's a huge matchup. Number one seed still alive, playing against Buffalo Bills, coming off a big win against probably the MVP of the year. Um, I don't know about this game, man. I really don't know. I wish I had a better analysis of it. I think it's going to be rather low scoring because that's what we've seen from these teams coming into this weekend. And I want to pick the Bills. I do want to.
Yeah, I didn't have a great thought process on this either. The first thing I did was pull up the 3 playoff meetings they've had in recent memory, and Patrick Mahomes' stats in these games are disgusting, like disgustingly good.
Yeah. Yeah.
First meeting in 2020, Chiefs win 38-24. Mahomes goes 29 of 38 for 325 and 3 touchdowns. Second meeting, the 13-second game, the overtime where only the Chiefs
That
got the ball and
was
they changes the playoff rules or whatever. Mahomes goes 33 of 44 for 378 and 3 touchdowns. He runs for 69 and a touchdown. This is Gabe Davis, 8 catches, 201 yards, 4
what a
touchdown game.
game.
And then he's
What a game.
fallen off the face of the earth.
He's in Jacksonville now.
And he's injured and bad.
Yeah.
And then last season, the Chiefs win 27-24. Patrick Mahomes goes 17 of 23, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns. Big Isaiah Pacheco game in that one. Yeah, I mean, Mahomes has been ridiculous against Buffalo in the playoffs. Unreal efficiency. They put up the points. Last year was a little more defensive. It's what I expect. The the difference for the Bills in this game is the production they get from their running backs, because that's the way that's how they're functioning as an offense. It's what they're running their offense through, is their running backs. James Cook on the ground, Ty Johnson in the air, Ray Davis a little in between the tackles. He reminds me of Doug Martin a little bit. I think he wears the same number as Doug Martin too. I think they both wear 22. Shout out Doug Martin. I really like Doug Martin.
See, we always gotta have a shout out.
I know.
Someone must get a shout out.
I've never even thought to compare Ray Davis to Doug Martin either. I just had that in my subconscious, and I'm like, that guy's Doug Martin. So yeah, the Bills did nothing special against the Ravens, but they didn't turn the ball over. You can't turn the ball over against the Chiefs. It's the bottom line. I went
Yeah.
26-23 Bills, but I don't feel good about it because I don't feel good about picking the Chiefs either. So I don't
And
know.
here's my thing.
I hate it.
I said I want to pick the Bills, but I'm not. I'm not. I'm like I cannot bet against the Chiefs in the playoffs. I can't do it. I'm hoping Pacheco gets a game. I think Mahomes will do what needs to be done as far as the playoffs, whether it's 180 yards or 350 yards, like you said.
Probably
He'll
a
just get it
reasonable
done.
deduction, yeah.
Like it doesn't matter what you need out of him. He'll give it to you. It doesn't have to be pretty. It probably will be ugly. I think this will be
Yeah,
an ugly win
probably.
for whoever wins. But I think the Chiefs win it 21-17.
I just like cursing the Bills with the chance of playing their 5th NFC East opponent in the Super Bowl. The 4 they lost in a row were all
Wow.
NFC East
Yeah.
teams. So if they made a 5th and then played another NFC East team, and God forbid they lost a 5th, kind of be hilarious to talk
A
about.
Super Bowl loss for the Bills would probably be the most devastating. Like you finally climb to the top of the hill
Yeah.
just to get immediately knocked off. I don't think New York would ever recover.
Yeah, I'm. Man, the Chiefs to me are so unwatchable. I hate being that guy. I really do. And like I'm a guy who appreciates defense and stuff like that. I just can't even appreciate watching the Chiefs play football. I really can't. It really annoys me. I hate being that guy. I really do. But like
Yeah,
I can't do it, man. I can't do it. So big rooting interest in Buffalo in this game.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean we didn't touch on too much. I like just these teams are what we know them to be. I
yeah.
think Washington is really the only outlier and kind of the new kid on the block. But like the rest of these teams, they are what they've been the whole season. There hasn't been like a drastic change or anything like that. And collision course, kind of what we all expected, except
Hmm.
Washington. So
And
should be exciting. Nice little
I will
wrinkle.
say, before we wrap up the NFL talk, I had a preseason prediction. I'm going to say this every week, and hopefully, I can keep this going into the Super Bowl. My Super Bowl prediction was the Eagles beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and both teams are one game away from the Super Bowl rematch that I predicted at the top of the year. So I will say, if my prediction's correct, I don't know what I'll do, but I'll be happy. I'll be happy about
I do like me a rematch, although I just said it. I don't want the Chiefs to win.
it.
My second life on the Super Bowl prediction ended rather shortly. That did not last very long.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at least the Texans got a playoff win.
Yeah, good for the Texans, I guess. I don't.
The Packers.
Yikes, Jordan Love, man,
Eh,
double agent stuff.
Toyotathon, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he needs to find he needs to hook up with that Toyota lady who's been doing those commercials for like 15 years, and he needs to get an extension on Toyotathon throughout the playoffs.
Yup. Yup. Yeah, he needs to make some moves around Toyota.
All right,
Maybe next year.
yeah, maybe next year. Last thing, speaking of next year, last thing I had in the NFL, some head coach movement. We can touch on these guys a little bit. I think the
Big one this
most
morning.
predictable thing of the entire carousel, if you will, was Mike Vrabel to the Patriots. That
Yeah.
was written in the stars. That happened like
I was gonna say that verbatim. That's crazy that you said that. I was gonna word for word say the same
that
thing.
that was like happened like 2 hours after the Patriots regular season ended. And then
Yeah.
they also got Terrell Williams from Detroit, who's the Detroit defensive line coach, to be their defensive coordinator. I think next in line was Ben Johnson to the Bears. This kind of sparks a whole nother conversation about head coaching interviews of of coaches on playoff teams that are preparing for playoff games.
Hmm.
I know a lot of Detroit fans were not happy with Ben Johnson apparently having his staff like close to assembled like as soon as he got to Chicago. At least
Yeah.
a plan in place. So it's an interesting conversation. I don't know what the fix is. I really don't, because it's a similar thing with college and the bowl games and the transfer portal and all that, where
There's loopholes.
the timing doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's unfair timing because if you make these other guys wait for interviews, these other teams they can't wait. They got to put their staffs together. They need some type of contingency and they need a plan on how to attack the offseason. You can't be waiting until mid-February for this stuff. Like you really got to get it rolling. It's really unfortunate. So I don't know what the fix is. I don't know if there is a fix. I think you just kind of have to live with it. I think Detroit's also jaded by the fact they just got destroyed in their 15
In
and
their own
2 home playoff
stadium.
game. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would not blame Ben Johnson for that either. Your quarterback is concussed. You scored 31 points. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other
Oh,
stuff that didn't go your way that I would complain about first. Um, then we got Aaron Glenn to the Jets. Good for the Jets, man. They secured
mm.
somebody.
So
Um,
that's a move of all time.
he
That's what
did
that
he
is.
did he did okay with not a lot in Detroit, and he was good when he had his full arsenal with him. And the Jets have a fairly complete roster in my opinion. The big problem is quarterback. I mean, I have no idea what you do there. So good luck, Aaron Glenn, figuring that one out. But you got a pretty good defensive roster. I think he can be pretty competitive pretty soon with the Jets. And then most recently this morning, officially announced Liam Cohen to the Jacksonville Jaguars. What a saga that was.
Yeah,
Um,
that was something.
and really unfortunate that all these people take this stuff way too seriously on social media. I think Liam Cohen's wife tweeted that they were actually at the hospital with their son who was like an autoimmune disease. So that's why there was like no conversation on where they were and what they were doing. So really ridiculous stuff from Tampa Bay fans there, calling him like a
Yeah.
snake and all this stuff like that. Like really unfortunate. Big hire for Jacksonville. Also, shout out Liam Cohen got Trent Baalke fired. Huge win for Jacksonville and their fans. Liam Cohen, you are a savior. I wish you all the best as well with your family situation. I hope that's all good, and I hope you can turn Trevor Lawrence around because yikes
Yeah, it needs a
with
turnaround
that
badly.
situation recently in Jacksonville. Doug Peterson, interesting stint following the Urban Meyer era that
That
lasted
was
like
also an
two
interest.
weeks.
That was quite the stint.
Thank God Trent Baalke is gone. Thank you, Liam Cohen.
Yeah. That,
And then also this morning, Pete Carroll
yep.
out of retirement. We're assembling the retirement home in the AFC West.
Yep.
Andy
You got
Reid, Pete Carroll, Sean Payton, and Jim
Harbaugh,
Harbaugh.
Jim,
Okay.
because John is in Baltimore.
Yes, I mix up their names. I can picture their faces. Their faces are different actually. I
Yeah,
usually mess up their
Jim's
names
the
though.
one without a Super Bowl. He's got the natty
He's
though.
got the natty. Fun AFC West
Very
stuff. I shout out
yeah.
Pete Carroll gets to stay on the West Coast doing his thing. Knowing him, he'll bring Marshawn Lynch out of retirement again. Um,
Dude, that would be insane.
bring him back
Marshawn
to the
Lynch.
Raiders.
He was on the Raiders, right?
Yeah, for like 2 minutes.
Wow.
Fun head coaching saga.
That's
Final note: Saints are relevant. I have no idea what they're doing. And then the Cowboys. They get rid of McCarthy and they're just kind of plodding along and they want to hire Brian Schottenheimer, who's like a disgraced offensive coordinator that bounces around NFL teams like a high school thought. Because he can't stick anywhere because no one thinks he's good coordinator. That
I
was
think they
maybe
want Kellen Moore back too.
maybe a
I
little
just thought.
harsh. Maybe they do. If I was Kellen Moore, I wouldn't go back though.
Yeah, that would be dumb.
So yeah, interesting situation. Apparently Dion would take the job, which obviously he would. Who would say no to the Cowboys head coaching job?
Yeah.
Realistically, coming from Colorado, he's complaining with Colorado athletic department about NIL stuff. Shocker.
Yeah. Who could have seen this one coming?
And yeah, I said the Saints have no clue what they're doing. I have no clue what the Saints are doing. I don't think they know what they're doing. I don't even have an inkling of who they could hire. So that's a little recap on the head coaching carousel this year. Fun
Yeah, that
stuff.
was a fun recap. I like it. I like it.
Fun
You did
stuff
good.
out of that. Yeah.
Um, okay, so we covered that base. Now we mentioned college football. So now we gotta mention Ohio State winning the national championship. Shout out to my roommate from Downingtown, Pennsylvania. Um, Will Howard, Downingtown West guy from PA.
Oh,
Um,
word. That's fun.
not much to say about it.
Yeah.
Ohio State is a unit. They were a unit all year. They beat a Notre Dame team that was good, but not as good. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
They made it interesting. You talked about it with me earlier. I'll let you take it away from here, but as expected.
I just always think it's really funny. I think Bears fans were talking about hiring Ryan Day. I think a lot of people are talking about Ryan Day getting fired for losing to Michigan. He could lose to Michigan the rest of his career, and the 12-team playoff format just allows him to do that. It just doesn't
Yeah,
matter. It's
yeah,
completely irrelevant. If he loses to Michigan every year and it plays him out of the Big Ten championship, then you play one less game and you get a matchup against a technically worse team in the first round of the CFP. Like who cares? Um,
hmm
so yeah, that's kind of the path for them. Um, they just they got so many guys back with their funding was really impressive from that standpoint. So many fourth and fifth year starters on the defense, and in recent memory, when they have these superstar quarterbacks like Stroud and Fields, the defense was really questionable. And they managed to maintain these guys that they've had on the team since those teams, like Jack Sawyer as a fifth year player. Um, and they get complementary pieces in the portal with Davison Igbinosun, who had a brutal year this year. Actually, he was maybe the worst player on their defense. He led the country in penalties the entire game. He was just hugging Notre Dame receivers. He's a New Jersey guy. That's why I mentioned him. Brother Desmond went to Rutgers. I think just graduated. Um,
Are
they
you
got
Rara?
They got Caleb Downs from Alabama. I think he was a unanimous award winner. I don't know if he got the Thorpe or not. No, Janae Barron got the Thorpe. I think he got some other DB award. I can't remember. And people were like, "Oh, he doesn't get interceptions." Since when does that equate to you being a good defensive back?
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't.
It's-
Also a good returner. Uh, yeah, they got super complimentary pieces in the portal. Mainly on offense, you get Will Howard. I just find it funny Will Howard's the guy that wins the national championship for Ohio State and not C.J. Stroud or Justin Fields.
yeah.
You get Judkins from Ole Miss. Like, that's just not even fair. Travion Henderson sticks around. Jeremiah Smith is like the best freshman receiver in God knows how long.
They
Um,
ran that one. I think you texted me when it happened. When they ran that one play, that he came in motion, he dropped in and pulled to the outside, almost like on a flat route. That is the play Alabama ran on them with Devonta
oh,
Smith.
yes.
I saw
Yes.
that was pretty sick. I
Yes, I do
enjoyed
remember
that a
that.
lot.
Chip Kelly was in his bag a little bit. He was in the
Yeah,
Duffy a little. Yeah, just a wagon of a team. They had a lot of movement on the offensive line throughout the year, and they persevered through that. It's just super deep. I forget. I can't remember who it was on Twitter said they. I think they mocked 16 players in the draft, or they had like determined there were 16 draftable players on Ohio State, which would be the most drafted players ever. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Dane Brugler on Twitter. He's a PFF guy. He has pretty good stuff. I can't exactly remember who it was though. So that's not great journalism on my behalf. But I mean the team is so loaded. Like eye test will
yeah.
tell you you could probably draft anybody on that team and be good with it. Um, Judkins had 3 touchdowns. And then, I mean, I guess shout out to Notre Dame for hanging in there. They're down 31-7 fourth quarter. They get a touchdown, a 2-point conversion. It's 31-15. Jaden Greathouse was awesome. You could say he's pretty great in the second half. 2 touchdowns, a lot of contested catches. He was really good for them. And then they're down 31-15. They're in the red zone. It's 4th and goal. They elect to kick a 29-yard field goal that slams off the upright. And all of a sudden, you're still down 16. Just a really questionable call from Freeman. I don't know why you're aggressive. You already went for the 2-point conversion when you're down by 24 to play for the 2-point conversions later on to stay down 2 possessions. I don't know why you kick a field goal. You missed anyway. They get down there. They get another 2-point conversion on like a Philly special type play. End around pass to Bo Collins in the back of the end zone. And then they can't stop Jeremiah Smith one-on-one. Christian Gray got them to the national championship. And then he gets torched by Jeremiah Smith one-on-one.
Yeah.
The full third of the field. And ends their season. So pretty
Yeah.
fitting way to go out.
That's when I turned the game off right there. I
Yeah,
was like, cool.
pretty fitting way to go out. Jeremiah Smith is a animal, freak of nature. Emeka Egbuka actually broke all of Ohio State's receiving records this year. If Jeremiah Smith is even like average compared to his production he got this year, he will be shattering those records in 2 seasons' time. Um, so yeah, really no takeaways from this game, to be completely honest with you. I think Notre Dame's probably going to get in the college football playoff every year as long as they're not in a conference as well, because they're going to win.
Yeah.
They're
It's
going to
just
win
free.
11 games or 10. Even if they go 10-2, they're probably going to get in every year. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Not that interesting. Also, college football needs to figure out the timing with all these games. Like you just had 2 weeks off from the last college football game, and no one watched this. So
Yeah. It
weird
everyone's
stuff.
just NFL now.
Yeah, not great from college football.
It's
They need to. I don't know how you plan for this, and
I
they've been
mean, you
planning it for a while and just not executed well.
gotta tweak it,
Yeah,
honestly. Just
I think
little
it's. I
fixes.
think fundamentally it's okay. I think 8 would have been better. I think the good thing you get, like the allure to 12 teams, is that you get the guaranteed G5 school in every year. So you're like, oh, Cinderella. Like
Yeah.
there's your Cinderella every year. You get your G5 school in guaranteed with the 12 teams. Um, but also a byproduct of that is because you're just playing more games, you're gonna have more bad games, which also means since you're playing more games, you're gonna have more good games. So it just offsets each other. It's not like the
Yeah.
product as a whole is actually improved. You're literally just playing more games, so you're either gonna have more good games and more bad games. It's
Overall, I like the setup of the new playoff.
you can't go more
I
than 12 though. I think you go more than
No,
12, it's a
you cut it
disaster.
here. You cut it here.
Because there's just not teams deserving of being championship teams past that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I'm trying to think of like Boise and SMU were competitive. Don't get me wrong. You're not a national championship team. Like
yeah. I mean, oh, sorry, I can't believe I just started on. That was crazy. But I mean, teams like Ole Miss who just missed. I'd like a team like South Carolina, not to just be all SEC,
no,
but
I was gonna say of all the SEC teams that didn't get in, I thought South Carolina was the most deserving. Like I didn't want to see
yeah,
Ole Miss or Alabama. Give me South
which
Carolina, dude.
South Carolina got robbed on college football game day. On with college football game day in Columbia, um, South Carolina was absolutely robbed in that LSU game,
Oh yeah,
and
that was
I will not
that was an
forgive.
unfortunate game. Sellers got injured.
Yeah, because if they win that game,
They're in.
they're in.
Yeah.
They're in, and I won't forget that. I'm not a big U of SC guy in general. Not a big Gamecock guy, but that I saw it. I saw it with my own eyes, and I don't really like to critique refs or questionable stuff like that. That's above my pay grade. But that was broad daylight robbery.
I mean, they'll be good again next year. Sellers was a freshman. They
Yeah,
lose Rocket Sanders, who had a good little revitalization to his career. It was nice to see. He was really good at Arkansas. Then he got injured and had some, I think, off the field stuff maybe. I don't exactly remember what happened, but yeah, he fell off the page a little bit. Had a good season. Dylan Stewart is back. They had an awesome defensive line. Um, Kevin Kennard, really good. I think his name is Kevin. I think it was a double K. He was an edge. I think he won an award. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe someone beat him out for it and he deserved it. I can't. This stuff is kind of evading me because it happened so long ago. Like, we're still talking about college football, and that stuff was so long ago.
yeah,
Like, any other bowl game was like over a month ago at this point.
yeah. It's
So
been a
I
minute.
barely even remember that.
I'm just past
Um,
it.
yeah, it's evading me. They'll be good next year, I think. And hopefully they do tweak this stuff a little bit. But yeah, man, I feel like we've been mumbling and bumbling our way to
Yeah,
through
we're
this
we're
a little
we're
bit.
we're crossing the finish line here. We're final stretch. You have one more thing to talk about. You have one more thing to bring up. One more thing to do before we sign off, and that is it's your turn for the top five. What are we ranking this week?
I don't want to cop out and do like the same thing again, although I'm really tempted. Um,
We could. I mean, there's four teams left.
mm,
Could do that.
maybe we get a little nostalgic, and I like, huh? Like semi recent memory. Like maybe you do like top five playoff games you remember watching or something like that.
Okay. Top five playoff games from we'll say the last 10 years.
Yeah, like growing up. Like I'm thinking like Michael Crabtree, Richard Sherman, sorry ass receiver type game stuff.
Yeah, Jermaine Curse.
I love Jermaine Curse, bro. I was a
I'm
huge
thinking
Jermaine
Jermaine
Curse guy.
Curse.
I loved Jermaine
Yeah.
Curse for no reason at all, dude.
Ooh, I know what's going. I know. I okay. I'm locked in. I like this pick a lot. I like this pick a lot, and we're gonna open up next week our show. We're gonna open it up with that ranking.
Yes.
We're gonna react to our predictions to the conference championships. We're gonna react to the Super Bowl matchup, which we'll know by then. We won't be talking about the Pro Bowl
Absolutely not. Miss me with that.
because no one talks about that. So we'll really dive into the
Wait, you don't
matchups.
want to break down the
Uh,
dodgeball game?
I do. We should do that. We should watch that together and upload a reaction
We should
video.
do
Is
like
what we should do.
dodgeball film breakdown.
I'd be down with
That
that.
might be moving.
I'd I would love that.
I should. Oh, I would have to make like a new overlay where I fit like our heads on one side of the screen and then like the footage on the other side
That'd be sick.
while we're like breaking it down. That'd be
We're gonna
hilarious.
figure that out. That
Yeah,
needs to get
I
done.
might have to figure that out. I might have to get in there, get back and cook in some overlays and graphics and stuff like that. We'll see.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
I like it.
I have to get up at like 9 o'clock tomorrow, which is not early at all. But considering I got up at like 1 p.m. today, um,
It's a challenge. Sleep
it'll be
schedule might be off.
little flip on that. Heading to MSG for number 8 Michigan State against Rutgers. Tom Izzo, master at evading the rack. Um, I just hope they give us something to cheer about because whole lot of Rutgers fans going to be in that building.
Yeah.
Ace Bailey's been on a heater the last 3 games. Hopefully the rest
Penn
of the team
Station's
can show
NJ
up.
Transit's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, I forget what train we're getting on. But, dude, I just love that the train is under MSG. You just walk up and you're there. It's the best.
Yeah. So good luck to Rutgers. Good luck to the Birds this weekend. That is gonna wrap up this week, Friday, January 24th. This has been bracket coverage. I'm Danny Mez here with Ryan DeGazio, and we will see you guys hopefully a week from today.